Sekeres and Price for Monday, June 3rd, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you are coming downtown for an event or just looking to explore the city, make it a stay at the Wall Center. Call them 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres and Price rate. Some blackout dates apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, Grady Sass, Hitting Switches, conducting things. Big show coming up, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
And we can tell you about a fabulous new deal. Have you been thinking about going electric, but you think, that one's too small? A lot of electric vehicles just too small. Well, Nissan has fixed it. The Nissan Aria. Go to Applewood Nissan in Richmond right now. Take one for a test drive. We sat in one earlier this year. Lease or finance it from just 1.99% right now. Go check out the Nissan Aria at Applewood Nissan at the Richmond Auto Mall.
All good at Applewood. If the Canucks won game 6 or 7, would they be in the Stanley Cup Final? That's our poll question today. You can vote at Sekeres and Price on the platform now known as X, Twitter, or YouTube. I appreciate that some like to do these woulda, coulda, shouldas. You know, there's an if to start the poll question. Hey, have fun with it. My sense is Dallas is just a better team. And no, but if you want to construct ways that they could have gotten through the Stars, then be my guest.
I think it would have been back-to-back series that looked an awful lot like each other. I think if the Canucks found a way in game 6 or 7, they would have been still vastly outshot in the series versus Edmonton, but found a way. They would have had to have done the same thing, because I think Dallas would have done to the Canucks what the Oilers did to the Canucks. And what are the chances the Canucks would have been able to walk that narrow path once more? Not impossible, but unlikely, if I was a big fan.
Dallas goes 7 games in the opening round against Vegas. Edmonton goes but 5. Dallas goes 6 games in the second round. Edmonton goes the full 7. And of course, Vancouver was a much easier travel situation for them than a lot of opponents could have been in the second round. And, you know, Dallas to Vegas, Dallas to Colorado is not too onerous either. Bottom line is, I didn't think there were many excuses out there for the Stars and their depth not to prevail in this series. Edmonton was sensational in game 4, evening that series. And I thought for sure we were going 7 games. I was quite disappointed, actually, that the Stars weren't able to force a 7th game.
Yeah, I thought it was coming too. And you know,
I know they had trouble on defense and injuries on defense, but I mean, the forward ranks in Dallas are very deep. And, you know, there were some guys who just did not. I mean, we talked about Pavelski and how much of a playoff performer he's been in the past. Well, looked like Father Time caught up. Duchesne, Marchment. There were some other guys in that Dallas series,
even Tanev,
Stars, that I would have thought would have made bigger imprints on the series.
Well, they did outshoot them 35-10, and that was fabulous. They did figure out at 5-on-5 for the most part how to defend McDavid and Draisaitl, although the opening goal by McDavid, I mean, just absolutely sublime. But to get that production on the power play for the Oilers, and nobody's been able to figure out the Oilers power play for the most part, you know, that can win them a series very clearly. I mean, the Stars did everything they needed to do at even strength to suppress the Oilers, but
yeah,
power play wins it.
Bottom line, I voted no on the poll.
Yeah, I voted no as well.
Grady, did you vote no?
It's moot. No vote.
You offered the poll.
Yeah. To our listeners.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know I had to. Is that part of your?
You didn't have
rules?
to. I mean, I would have.
You just thought
unwritten rules.
If Demko had really good numbers against the Stars, and has his whole career. Now, no Brock Besser probably for that series, right?
Right.
Elias Pettersson wasn't just going to magically recover from whatever knee injury was ailing him. The scoring dried up. Were they going to find a way to produce on the power play?
And I honestly, I don't think Demko plays game 1 of that series anyway. He was closer.
Well, he said he was. Yeah.
I think it would have been 2 or 3.
Now, I think the the Canucks could have muscled their way. The Stars didn't have a lot of physical pushback against the Oilers. I thought the Canucks matched the intensity in that regard more than Dallas did. So, yeah, I think there was definitely a path there, but overall the Stars were just a deeper club, and Jake Ottinger against Archer Shilovs or Demko in game 2.
Yeah, I mean, Ottinger wasn't superb,
No.
to say the least, and needed a little bit better goaltending, particularly if you're only going to play 5 defensemen in the series to any kind of extent. Anyways, let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Douglas. The Stanley Cup Final is set. Edmonton versus Florida. And think of all the ties that bind over history between the Vancouver Canucks and the Florida Panthers. Let me run down some of the names. Roberto Luongo, Pavel Bure. 2 Hall of Famers, right?
Yeah.
And Bure holds the distinction of being the first superstar here with the Canucks and the first superstar with the Panthers as well. Ed Jovanovski. Roger Nielsen. We spent a lot of time talking about Roger in the second round, right? He coached the Canucks to the 82, spirited underdog playoff run. Same with the Panthers, the year of the Rats, right? When they made the Cup Final and lost to Colorado. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is playing for the Stanley Cup. David Booth, the trade that was supposed to be a kingmaker, right? From Florida to Vancouver. Then you get guys like Keith Ballard and Brett Hedican, Jason Garrison, Eric Goodbranson. I mean, you could almost form a defense corps.
Todd Bertuzzi didn't stay long. Todd Bertuzzi there.
Bertuzzi was there for a minute. The goaltenders, we mentioned Luongo. Markstrom, of course, came from Florida. Alex Ault played for both teams. So did Kirk McLean.
Yeah.
37 games as a Panther, split over 2 seasons.
No, it's weird. They were the Penguins. The Canucks are now part Penguin. They used to be part Panther.
Yeah. And then Dale Talon.
Yeah.
Longtime Panthers general manager who serves as an advisor for Jim Rutherford, Patrick Alvin, and Canuck Sports Entertainment.
You're
right?
forgetting Thomas Drance. But yeah, other than that.
Not a Canuck.
No.
Not employed
No.
by the Canucks. So, yeah. There has been, they are the 2 furthest markets away from each other in the National Hockey League. And in fact, this championship series will be the furthest away of 2 markets ever in the Stanley Cup Final. Yeah. Right down to the fact that there are no directs from Edmonton to Fort Lauderdale or Miami.
Correct.
That surprises me a little bit because Miami and Lauderdale are big time tourist destinations, cruise ship destinations. I would have thought there's at least one direct.
And my understanding is the NHL has not done Boston, Vancouver in 2011, folks, because of the great distance there. The league did provide media a charter flight back and forth just because they wouldn't get there for the next day's practices, et cetera, et cetera. So this allowed media to travel, make it, be able to not miss a beat. They haven't, to my understanding, I don't know that they've done it since.
Yeah, don't care.
But they might do it this year just to make sure they're breaking it back and forth and cover the games.
Canucks and Bruins were the longest distance at more than 4,000 kilometers between cities in the Stanley Cup Final. Montreal, LA, well, really the New York metropolitan area teams and LA, period. I noticed on the list was the 25 Cup Final, Montreal versus the Victoria Cougars.
Media didn't get a chart of that one.
To which Jeff Paterson tweeted, I feel like we owe Victoria and those Montreal teams a shout there. Their travel was a little tougher than the rest.
I don't think there was travel. If I'm not mistaken, I think one team hosted all the games. I don't think there was travel.
Ah.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's look into that for tomorrow. E's and O's, 25 Stanley. We're coming up on the 100 year, the centenarian for the Stanley.
We should celebrate it. We should celebrate
the good people of Victoria, all those Cougars fans. Anyways, Cup Final is set, Edmonton and Florida.
Yes, and it's all brought to you by Douglas Mattresses. They are named Canada's best mattresses on Canadian Living. So you find out why that is, folks. And really, it's risk-free. Industry-leading 365-night trial. If you don't like it, you get a full refund. Oh, but that's wasteful. I don't want to do. No, then they donate those mattresses to charity. So you can do that relatively conscious free, if you will. All you have to do is go to douglas.ca/Canucks Army and order yours today and get that comfort sleep bundle alongside with it. 2 memory foam pillows and pillow protectors and a cotton sheet set plus a mattress protector free. Go to douglas.ca/Canucks Army.
This is the first night since April. No NHL playoff game to watch, no NBA playoff game to watch.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with ourselves?
The international soccer window could have saved the day, but that doesn't come until later on in the week. So, yeah, you have to, like, reach out and maybe talk to a human.
Blake, you may actually have to spend time with your family.
I did a lot of that on the weekend, driving kids to games.
So did I.
Yeah.
Matt will be playing with his cats all week.
I missed a lot of last night's game.
The cats are hours of entertainment, Grady, as you know. They're that perfect age. They chase each other all over the apartment, through the tunnel, up and down the stairs, onto furniture.
Well, my puppy's in heat right now and has to wear diapers in our house.
Oh, wow. That's
yes.
maybe Bet's.
Want to trade?
Maybe Bet365 has odds for that. Chances of a poop in the diaper. Plus 130.
Puppy in heat versus 2 young cats.
First cat to get on top of the fridge.
Both of them get on the fridge now. Even the runty one. Don't know how he does it. Never used to be able to do it before. Now he gets on up there. Caught him the other day.
The good news is we do have stuff to talk about with regards to the Vancouver Canucks.
We do. A few things I wanted to get to here. First of all, Frank Saravelli saying he would not be surprised if Carolina winger Martin Necas was traded prior to Saturday's game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. And just so everybody knows, you are allowed to make trades after the trade deadline. The players are just not eligible for the Stanley Cup playoffs. In fact, we've already seen a trade of Ryan McDonough from Nashville to Tampa Bay. And this one caught me by surprise, not because I don't already believe that Carolina has decided they're going to cut bait there. Frank did a great job of explaining why Necas was available on Friday's hit with us. But they're still in the business of interviewing GM candidates there in Carolina. Although it sounds like the owner, Tom Dunn, is going to have a firm hand on a wheel, that the GM is more a make recommendations rather than make decisions.
And did we not talk to Frank about that? And he thought that Eric Tulsky was going to remain in that seat.
So, but to be making that decision as quickly as they would be making it here, he also reported that, or I guess it was Darren Dreger who reported Carolina looking for like a defenseman who's like a number 3, number 4, a second pair defenseman really for Martin Necas. So that could be a really interesting move here. And of course, making that move prior to the Cup Final would probably put them in the good graces of Gary Bettman, Bill Daly in the league office, not to steal any thunder.
There is
from the Oilers and the Panthers.
There is no recent smoke that suggests that Filip Hronek is being shopped or would be involved in that trade. So, given that, do you think the Canucks are in on HS right now?
I don't.
No, it doesn't feel like it.
Sense. No, I mean,
what are the assets that get them that player across the line right now if Hronek is not involved?
Well, is Nils Hoglander a possibility?
And that's fine, but there's more than that. Nils Hoglander himself is not getting you an HS.
Yeah,
so
I mean, J Pat wrote on this for Canucks Army. We'll talk to Jeff about it later, but Hoglander at this stage of the game, it was the playoffs. It's not the first guy to go through the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time and not play up to his level. He's on the terrific contract, and if you're the Canucks, you still have some cap punch there as things are getting better with cap year-to-year increases, but you still have a cap crunch there. So getting a guy on 24 goals at 1.1 million, and I mean, he's only still an RFA with Arbrights after this upcoming season. is tidy business.
If they're hell bent on a
Yeah, I mean,
defenseman,
you say it's got to be more than Hoglander for HS. Like 24 goal scorer at 1.1, and HS was 24 goals as well, and just be looking in the $7 million range or something like that. I don't know. I mean, Carolina has typically been a budget conscious team and understands the value of a good contract.
doesn't scratch their defenseman itch, though.
Yeah.
With all those defensemen that are free agents, they're going to have to fill the bill. And you know, if there's only a couple of suitors for HS, by all means. But there's going to be 31 teams that probably call about the price at the very least, rather than being in intense negotiations. And you know, they're not going to move on Wielander. So you know, what other defensemen the Vancouver Canucks have in their purview that are?
Well, I mean, I think I don't think that's. I think if you offered them a good deal for a forward, that could get the job done as well. But
I don't think that's sexy enough, though, Nils Hoglander, to be that guy that makes them change their minds. So.
Well, and one of those free agents you mentioned is winger Jake Gensel, and it's funny because Carolina had not typically been a big rental team. That if they were going to acquire rentals, they would typically be more depth players than frontline players. They finally take the big, huge swing for the top rental on the trade deadline market, Jake Gensel. He plays pretty well, but they don't advance past the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I saw our friend Irf Gafar of Rinkwide saying that Gensel is almost certainly going to sign down south in the U.S. That do not anticipate Jake Gensel signing with a Canadian team. He is, of course, an American and has played his entire career in the United States. And going back to USHL, college hockey, AHL, and then his 2 NHL stops. So, you know, the Canucks like Jake Gensel. They were connected to Jake Gensel in a big way in those trade deadline sweepstakes. They weren't able to get it done. And I don't think they're going to be able to get it done in free agency either.
No, he's going to be expensive.
Yes, that's the other thing.
All these players that, you know, Canucks fans want, and understandably, nice profiles on the free agent market this year. Man, if the Canucks are in on any of them, I'll be surprised, but they can only be probably on one. Like if the Canucks land any big fish in free agency, it's going to be one guy because they can't afford to do a couple.
Edmonton had 10 shots on goal in game 6 and still won the hockey game. Fewest shots in a conference final clincher, and by a mile. The previous record was 17 by Boston when knocking out the Washington Capitals in the 1990 Prince of Wales conference.
Fewest shots in any clincher by 3 shots. That was 13. Like it blew all the records out of the water.
Well, and we're shot differential minus 25. Shots were 35-10.
Yeah.
For the Dallas Stars. Let me ask you something. When you see a team with the offensive firepower of Edmonton put so few shots on goal, and by the way, they got better protecting leads, huh?
Yep.
As this series went along compared to what we saw against the Canucks.
Skinner got better.
They always looked a little jittery protecting leads. It was the damnedest thing because even, you know, at a tie hockey game, Edmonton defended pretty well.
Yeah, kept shots to the outside a little bit. Skinner
Playing
got
from
better.
Behind, Edmonton defended pretty well. Edmonton gets a multi-goal lead. They didn't defend pretty well, but they fixed a lot of what ailed them against the Canucks in this series. If Edmonton, of all teams, with those 2 superstars, are going to play a low shot volume game and be successful, does Coach Tocchet have to go back to the lab and do the deep dive on everything that he talked about at his year-end media availability? You know, he said, I'm still not going to be the biggest shot volume guy, but I do have to look at ways to get more shots on goal. Is the league moving to a quality over quantity point of view that Rick Tocchet certainly adopted and had talked about over the course of the season?
Well, it's funny. In covering Major League Soccer, like Danny Sartini, ironically, has the exact same idea. Like don't take shots outside the box. Those are such low percentage. Let's get into scoring areas.
A little bit different in soccer, but I hear what you're saying.
No, but some teams are of the mind of, hey, give it a go from the outside the box. If you got a good look, take a shot. And that's not his MO. And I just wonder if that's, a pan sport thing here of make good attempts at whatever the scoring instrument is rather than just be frivolous with it. I'm also just intrigued by forward physicality in the offseason and to see if people try to copy a Matthew Tkachuk sort of style of thing, like how big is
Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that, Leon Draisaitl's been running roughshod with his size too. Not that he's rough necessarily, but he's
hard on the puck.
But you're not going to get him off the puck.
No,
exactly.
No,
so
there's a lot of strength there.
As we wonder about the copycatness of the offseason, I wonder if that's also another possibility.
Yeah. And put a question to J-Pat on that with regards to whether there's anything the Canucks can emulate here with regards to building your team or style of play. Edmonton is the first Canadian team in the Stanley Cup Final since 2021 when the Montreal Canadiens made an underdog Cinderella run to the final and ultimately lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Give me a break. What joke. Remember Kucherov?
I don't.
Did Tampa win the first 3 games? Montreal won game 4 at home.
Yeah.
It was like a party on the streets.
That's right.
And
yeah.
Was it Kucherov? It was Kucherov, right? Not Vasilevsky, who went, give me break. They think they're winning cup. They won 1 game. And that, of course, came at the end of the Canadian division season.
Right.
So we knew a Canadian team was going to the Final Four that year, and Montreal was able to make it to the Cup Final,
playoff.
much like we knew a Canadian team was going to the Final Four this year, although more legitimately, more naturally than previous years, with Vancouver and Edmonton meeting in the second round of the playoffs. 7 Canadian teams have gone to the Cup Final since the last Canadian Stanley Cup, which also was Montreal in 1993. This is Edmonton's second crack at it. They also went in 2006, losing to the Carolina Hurricanes, their second appearance.
That was the Horkoff-Pisani years.
Right, correct. Of course, the Canucks,
a little different here.
Canucks have had 2 of those 7 appearances as well in 94 and in 2011.
Those are the clubhouse leaders, are they, for appearances since?
Amongst the Canadian 7, yes, of the 7 appearances since 93, Edmonton 2, Vancouver 2 are your leaders there.
Yeah.
Montreal, Ottawa, and Calgary, each with 1
apiece. Is there a prominent team missing that existed during all those years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there sure is.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Like Winnipeg, they weren't there. They didn't exist for some of those years. You can't blame them.
And here's what I'll say, and I know there's been much ink spilled, breath lost on the whole notion of Canada's team, which, I don't subscribe to. I actually have family members who do pick up for Canadian teams, but if not for the ad campaign, if not for that certain ad campaign, I don't think we're talking about it quite as much right now. Yeah, well,
I think
it always seems to come up regardless of who the Canadian
right, but just the volume's pretty high on it right now.
Here's what I will say, though. I do think there are a lot of Canadians who are pulling for Connor McDavid to be that great a player. And of course, we're going to finally see him in a Canadian jersey at the senior level this upcoming season for the Four Nations Cup, and then ultimately the Olympics in Milano Cortina, Italy. I do think Connor McDavid has a subset of fans independent of team allegiance.
Yeah,
and I do think there are
best player in the world.
When you are the best player in the world, you draw from all corners, all quarters. And I would think that Connor McDavid alone is sustaining and floating the notion of fans in other markets, neutrals, fans who have team allegiance, but want to see this magnificent player get on over the top and win a Stanley Cup.
Let me ask you this lascivious question. if the Oilers won the Stanley Cup, would that solidify his future in Edmonton? Or in some ways, does he now get exonerated from being a quitter and leaving Edmonton before the Cup?
Yep,
and can he now ask to leave a little bit more free and clear consciously because he's brought a cup there?
It's a great question. I would think the latter. I think we're a long way from answering that because I think he's going to want to run it out and see,
back to backs or whatever. Yeah.
Now, Draisaitl is going into the final year of his deal next year, and Connor has 2 years left.
Yeah.
So, could I see in the summer of 2026 McDavid wanting to play elsewhere? Yes, I could, especially if he's brought a cup to Edmonton. I think competitors of that level would feel job not done. They haven't quite, lived up to or delivered as many expected they would. There was a time when I wondered about his frustration level because Edmonton was not a particularly well-managed franchise for a while. I did wonder, whether he would get tired of all that and want to move on. But it seems like he has sifted through the troubled waters here and gotten to the other side where they finally have built a contender around him. The other thing that I'll say for both Florida and Edmonton as they make their way to this Cup final is, and Saravelli mentioned this to us months ago after he had finished that podcast with Carolina owner Tom Dundon, who expressed that his worldview, his philosophy is take as many cracks as you can. That if all 4 Stanley Cup playoff series are something close to a coin flip, and let's face it, outside of the first round, they pretty much are. They pretty much are. I mean, look at the series prices on Bet365 and whatnot. You're not talking about huge gulfs between teams once you get down to the final.
And they were good series. They were tight.
And in some cases, even the entirety of the playoff field, 16 teams. That if all playoff series are coin flips, take as many cracks as you can, keep your core group together as long as you can to continue banging on the door, and hopefully one day it falls down. Florida's going to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals here. They're the first team to do that in 15 years since the Pittsburgh Penguins went in consecutive seasons, losing to the Detroit Red Wings the first year, coming back and beating Detroit in the second year. And Edmonton has taken a number of, bangs on the door here, going back to their last Western Conference final appearance against the Colorado Avalanche a couple of years ago. So, yeah, I mean, if there's anything to take away from this Cup final matchup, it's that build a team that's competitive in the playoffs year in, year out. And the longer you stick with that team, the Washington Capitals is a great example until they finally lifted the cup, the more likely you are that at some point you're going to get a trip to the finals.
And they don't have any significant free agents coming off the books for next year, the Edmonton Oilers. Like, the main guys are all coming back. It's the Connor Browns and Fogels and Henriques and Janmarks and Corey Perrys that are all coming off the books. So, they're going to run back the same group. If they are successful this year, the chances of another deep run next year is certainly there for Edmonton.
Yeah, they got about $10 million to fill out their roster next season, Edmonton. And Holloway, Broberg, the RFAs, they shouldn't be too expensive. So, and I understand it's not going to be Ken Holland. I mean, everyone seems to think that Ken Holland is not going to be have his contract extended there.
The future of Jack Campbell's $5 million cap hit, that's the only thing up for grabs. Yeah. But other than that, it's pretty much the same team.
Who knows if they're able to create the depth around Connor McDavid that they have this year with such little cap space available to them. And let's face it, probably a more junior general manager than Kenny Holland, the Hall of Famer, architecting the team next year. But yeah, I would suspect that Edmonton's got a real shot of bringing the cup home this year and is going to have a decent crack at it next year.
So per my question to you, as a Canuck fan, if you're watching or listening, is there reason to cheer on the Oilers for that? And that if he does win a cup now, you got no chance to win the cups right now as a Canuck fan. Does it expedite the departure of McDavid from the division?
Yeah. Well, especially since Patrick Allvin used about what kind of team he has to build and whether or not it has to be specific to the style of hockey that they're going to face in the playoffs.
Right.
He did not name the Edmonton Oilers, but it was pretty clear who he was talking about, right? And this is something we've talked to Patrick Johnston about as well, that when you find yourself in a division with a superior talent who drives winning at a level that very few players in your league drive winning at, you do sort of have to have a come to Jesus moment with your group in terms of the type of team you want to build.
Right, which is different than everybody trying to emulate the Bruins after 2011. Bruins were out of conference. You were taking this and painting a broad brush over the league, saying we need to find a way to beat Edmonton. That's just strategy, isn't it? Like, you're pretty sure you're going to have to go through them.
That's the next level of team building, of architecture. That's one of the considerations that you have to take into account. Once you have a team that you feel good about, you get to the postseason, you run into a wall and you say, okay, how do we get over this specific wall when you're talking about divisional playoffs? And we are still
That's 2 rounds.
Divisional playoffs.
I don't think you think about a central division opponent and think, oh, we got to learn how to beat the Stars.
No.
Cross those bridges when you get to them.
Right.
But the first 2 rounds, you're in division. You can make a pretty good assessment in the summer. We're likely to face Vegas. We're likely to face Edmonton and maybe X team.
For sure.
Find a wild card team in there, maybe LA.
Because the only way you don't get Edmonton in the postseason going forward is two ways. You get in one of the wild cards, you draw a central team in round 1.
Right.
Or
somebody
upsets them, much like the Kings in 82, right?
Yeah.
Where you have somebody else do you a solid. Other than that, at least for next year, and we'll see what happens with Draisaitl, you have to fashion a team that can get through those 2 players who, I mean, along with Nathan McKinnon, I think you can argue are the 3 best center icemen in the world, right? So what does that mean for the Vancouver Canucks? I think that means the big defense who can occupy space and diminish time, like we saw at even strength, right? It means some terrific penalty killing forwards, because you better have something of an answer for this historically great power play that they run out. And I think it also means players like Quinn Hughes, who are able effectively to help your defensive side of the puck by possessing it and playing offense so often in the other team zone, right? Because Coach Tocchet talked about several times in this postseason, holding on to the puck too long. Well, we may all get frustrated by the lack of shots and looking for the too cute or the too pretty play is still a pretty reasonable defensive tactic against those guys. We have the puck. They don't. We're in their zone. They're not in ours. So, yeah. See this in the NFL a lot. God knows my Bears, Blake. Every year it's Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. How do you get through Green Bay with that quarterback, right? You got to pass it. Everybody in the AFC East for 2 decades had to ask themselves the question, okay, we're a good team. Are we good enough to beat Tom Brady? Because that was the route in the postseason. And, I do think the Canucks have to give some deal of consideration to the opponent, namely the Edmonton Oilers, that they would likely face in any kind of playoff run over the next couple of seasons.
By the way, I just did a Jack Campbell buyout for the Oilers.
Oh, boy.
They're going to buy him out.
All right.
It's a really good buyout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a slam dunk.
Slam dunk.
Yeah.
Wow. Memorial Cup. And look, a couple of ways to look at this. Number 1, Saginaw got in by virtue of hosting. Didn't win their way there. Second way to look at it, well, every host gets in, and you still got to take down 3 league champions.
That's right.
And Saginaw did that. Finally getting over on the London Knights, their rival from the OHL playoffs. The Knights had won their playoff series against Saginaw. And
they were conference finalists in the league, I believe, right? So they were a good team.
Right. Vancouver Canucks prospect Josh Bloom scores the game-winning goal with 21.7 seconds left. If you did not see this hockey game, Saginaw led 3-0 in front of their own building. The party was on. And then here came the Knights storming back with 3 goals to draw even. It's a jam play in the dying seconds. Josh Bloom, the 20-year-old overager winger, acquired from the Buffalo Sabres in the Riley Stillman trade, jams home the puck. The Spirit win 4-3. He called it the biggest goal of his career on the on-ice interview, which was quite emotional. And Scott Wheeler of The Athletic, their prospect guy, says Josh Bloom, who has played the best game I've ever seen him play. And I would have to think that Scott, who is based there in Ontario, had seen Bloom play a lot of games through his OHL run because he's been in the OHL for a number of years as a 20-year-old player. We talked to Frank Corrado, who was covering the Memorial Cup for TSN on Wednesday. We asked Frank to give us a bit of a scouting report on Josh Bloom, and here's what he had to say. What you've seen of Josh Bloom, you think
hardworking guy,
Mm-hmm.
hardworking guy, straight line player, and he seems to be pretty loud on the ice, pretty loud in the dressing room from what we've seen from some of the clips from Saginaw. Like he's right in the thick of everything, and he wants the puck a lot. That's one thing I noticed, like watching him play. Like he does the beaver tap, which if I ever met him, I would tell him to stop doing that and like call for the puck. But like he wants it. He's really willing to get in on the forecheck. Like there's nothing fancy about his game, but I think it's an effective game, and he plays a busy style of game. So he's been noticeable. Like if you looked on the ice,
does he use speed to make that noise, or
yeah.
is it just fine?
No, like he's pretty fast. Like he's willing. Like he's willing. He's a straight line guy. Chip and chase. Use your speed. Get in on the forecheck. Play on the cycle. Like he's that type of player, but he's pretty effective at it. I think he's a loud-ish kind of player, but it's hard to not notice him because he tries to get involved and be in the middle of a lot of things. But like straight line guy, north south guy, and he'll be effective that way, and that's what his game is going to be.
Sounds like a Tocchet style winger, and we should note he did play 22 pro games this year, 14 with Abbotsford, 8 with Kalamazoo, just the 3 assists before going back to Saginaw. Yeah, he, as I just mentioned there in the clip, I didn't realize we were going that deep. Tried pro hockey.
Yeah.
Didn't work out.
But that's good. Like then there's no fear in it next year when he gets dropped into it, right? There's no surprises for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be an Abbotsford Canuck, I would think.
I would think. I mean, he's played 223 Ontario Hockey League games plus 37 more in the post. He's played 260 OHL games. He was a Saginaw Spirit player. He got moved to North Bay in advance of the trade deadline last season, had 12 points in 20 playoff games for the battalion, and then rejoined the Spirit after didn't work out in Kalamazoo or Abbotsford for the Canucks, and went on to have post more than a point per game season and add 11 more in 17 games, not to mention become a hero for that franchise as they win their first Memorial Cup with the game-winning goal. So 6'2", 190. We'll see what he's got in training camp, and God knows the Canucks could use some young wingers who are fast and hard on the puck and forechecking and chip and I mean, as Frankie described him, he sounds like
playoff kind of player.
Well, sounds like a Tocchet style player. So
and that's the other thing.
We'll see what Bloom's able to do.
He's been pretty decent in the playoffs in the OHL since he in those 37 games too.
Right.
So
let's get to our menu. It's brought to you by Greta 50 West Cordova. It's a fantastic spot to pregame or postgame, to watch the game, or to play in the arcade. And man, is that a fantastic arcade. Check it on out at 50 West Cordova. Trying something new. The whole show today is on YouTube. We've reached the off season, so we're going to do some experimenting. We've received incredible response since taking the program to YouTube months ago. And so we figured, hey, why not put the whole thing on YouTube today? So for those of you who aren't familiar with the podcast, we'll do a segment called Hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter.com. Both our interviews, Jeff Paterson and CFL Commissioner Randy Ambroise, will be on the YouTube program today, as well as the golf report as we look back on the RBC Canadian Open, not to mention BC Lions cuts going into their first game of the season against the Argos. Vancouver Whitecaps, who won again.
Big win.
So all of it is on YouTube today. Time for Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price. The Oilers are an underdog in the Cup Final.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but like the value. Got the two best skaters in the series, with all due respect to Matthew Tkachuk and Sasha Barkov. And the goaltending has steadied. Skinner was pretty good. You got to give him, boy, and I have Knobloch a ton of credit because he made some like big plums moves in goal against the Canucks. It worked out, and they've steadied the goaltending throughout this next series against Dallas. Edmonton at plus 110 to win the Stanley Cup.
I'll be your foil. Dallas, while a very good team, showed speed wobbles. Went down to 0-2 to the Vegas Golden Knights. Remember back in series number 1 in the first round. The Panthers have just been running roughshod for the most part through these playoffs. I'm going Panthers minus 130. I think it'll be a 6 or 7 game series, but I think the Panthers get it across the line. I'll take it on the chin there at the minus 130.
Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account altogether, all one word. Jay Pat is next. Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. GolfNorthlands.com. And now by Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, of course, the host of Rink-Wide Vancouver. And Jeff, we're going to start with our poll question and talk a little bit about the Canucks vis-a-vis these two Stanley Cup finalists. But they had won game 6 or game 7. Would they be in the Stanley Cup final now against the Florida Panthers?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we're at that stage where it's fair to ask and play the what if game. And, you know, with Thatcher Demko, with Brock Besser, Carson Soucy got suspended for a game in there with a power play that went sideways on them. Elias Pettersson not showing. Like, I mean, there's lots of ways to suggest that, yes, I mean, Vancouver Canucks, really all they needed was to find a way. And you go back through the series and even game 4 when they tied it up at 2 and should have been able to get it to overtime and kind of took their foot off the gas and lost that one. So lots of opportunities. I will say, though, if we're going to play the what if game, I think you have to recognize that Nashville could probably play the what if game as well, right? Like any team that gets eliminated, but you know, Nashville, what if they had won a home game against the Canucks? What if they hadn't let them off the mat? What if Colton Sissons had scored instead of hitting the post in the empty net? So you always look back and you lament the opportunities that were lost, but ultimately playoff hockey is about performing when the lights are brightest. And the Vancouver Canucks had 2 kicks at the can there to eliminate the Edmonton Oilers. They couldn't do it. Would they be in the Stanley Cup? Who knows? I mean, parallel universe stuff. I have trouble wrapping my head around that. I was a little disappointed in the Dallas Stars that they didn't put up a better fight. Now, full credit to the Edmonton Oilers, particularly the top end of their lineup, their special teams, and the Canucks saw all of that over 7 games. But just the way that the Dallas Stars won the Western Conference with depth scoring, with terrific goaltending, 1 through 6 on defense, and for whatever reason, the Dallas Stars just didn't look like the regular season Dallas Stars to me in the games that I watched, and I watched most of that series. So, again, I don't know that I can sit here and say, yes, absolutely, the Vancouver Canucks would have steamrolled the Stars and have been in the Stanley Cup final now, but it is fun to look back and look at all the different ways that things might have gone had the Canucks been able to eliminate.
But the Stars got power played and McDavided, if that can be a term. Both Draisaitl and McDavid shone in the series, and of course, most particularly on the power play. So, in the late stages, at the very least, I don't know that the Canucks would have done that necessarily to the Dallas Stars. I mean, the 10 shots in this deciding game obviously indicates that the Stars were the better team on the ice, on the judges' cards, but that's not how they measure it. I still wonder if the Dallas Stars look more like Game 6 and outshoot the Canucks like they did and win a lot of those games, especially if there's still no Thatcher Demko at that point.
Yeah, and look, it's tough to win in the playoffs. I think we all have been around this game long enough to recognize that. The Dallas Stars, a team that was built on the backs of some veteran players. A 39-year-old Joe Pavelski had 1 playoff goal. Jamie Benn, I thought, got quieter as the playoffs went along. Ryan Suter was starting to show his age, and as good as Chris Tanev was for them in the first couple of rounds, Chris Tanev, and clearly wasn't at 100%, but is Chris Tanev ever at 100%? But I thought he ran into some troubles as well. And so, some of these veteran guys that had given them great mileage and great service during the regular season, then, of course, they went out and spent assets to get Chris Tanev. Some of that seemed to catch up to the Dallas Stars as well, and the team that had, 8 20-goal scorers, I think, over the course of the regular season. They just couldn't spread their offense around. Now, yes, they outshot the Oilers, but we've seen that a lot in these playoffs that, at 2-0, the Oilers didn't need another goal. It was on Dallas at that point to mount a comeback, and protecting leads has been a bit of an issue for the Edmonton Oilers through the playoffs. Yeah, the Stars got one, but they couldn't get the second one that they needed. And so it is wild to think, like, the Canucks beat Nashville with 12 shots. Edmonton beat Los Angeles in the opening round with 13 shots. Was it 10? Was that the final total last night? I think it was. So, teams, I think, are better prepared than ever to defend, and it is living dangerously, and it's not always pretty, but ultimately, if you get that second goal and, build a bit of a cushion, I think these teams think that they can see these games through, and ultimately the Edmonton Oilers were able to do that, and they're on to the Stanley Cup final.
Jeff, the Tanev comment has me thinking, because maybe, performance like that sort of calms people's minds a little bit when it comes to signing him as a free agent this summer. But I had this thought independently as well over the weekend of, it feels like forever since the Canucks were eliminated. And in this market, of course, we're chewing on the Hronek and Zadorov numbers every single day, and Lindholm to some degree as well, because it's fresh in our mind. And so their contributions in the playoffs are still fresh in our minds here in this market. But league-wide, it's been a long time. Do you think that those playoff performances start to wane in terms of whatever bump we thought they were going to get on July 1st? Do you think that starts to wane here as time goes by?
In Zadorov's case, I don't. I think he elevated. I mean, they just 6'6", 240-pound defensemen don't grow on trees, and I think that the league's so heavily scouted now, regular season, and then the focus is even greater on the teams that are around come playoff time. So I think a performance like Zadorov, there isn't a team out there that wouldn't think, hey, we could use that. Now, price comes into it, obviously, and we'll see where the numbers go for the Canucks. They've still got time here to figure things out before the market opens on July the 1st. But I think that kind of performance, and look, I mean, the intangibles are there, right? Like big, physical, finish checks, but then added an offensive component as well that I don't think a lot of us were expecting, that we didn't really see in the regular season, although this is a guy that got into the mid-teens in goals in Calgary. So it's there in him, but it just seemed to bring out the best in him over the 13-game run in the playoffs. So I think that he attracted some attention if teams weren't fully sure what he's all about, and he's been at this for a while. The Canucks are his fifth stop. But I do think that his timing was perfect, heading to unrestricted free agency, whether he does re-sign with the Canucks or whether he shops himself on the open market. I think that was a pretty good sort of legacy playoff run for him, even if it was just 13 games, to rise to the challenge at that point, knowing that there are going to be several suitors out there. And really, it just takes one to meet his price on the open market.
This probably applies more to the Florida Panthers, Jeff, because when we look at how the Edmonton Oilers were built, of course, there were all those first overall and top 10 picks. But when you look at this Stanley Cup final, are there lessons to be gleaned for the Vancouver Canucks in terms of roster construction or in terms of style of play?
Well, I just don't think Bill Zito probably gets his due. This guy took over in 2020, and here it is 2024. They've been to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. Now, had things played out the way they were supposed to for this historic Boston Bruins team in the regular season last year, they would have eliminated Florida in the first round, and we wouldn't maybe be heaping such praise on the Panthers. But credit to them, they didn't go quietly. They found their way and ultimately were able to get to the final before coming up short. But I just think Bill Zito, maybe Columbus should have endeavored to keep him in the fold there as they look for a new hockey boss under Don Waddell. But the Matthew Tkachuk trade was a masterstroke of timing. You had to roll the dice, obviously. You had Jonathan Huberdeau coming off a 115-point season. but it was pretty unlikely that he was ever going to get back to anything close to that. And Mackenzie Weegar was a good player, but they saw an opportunity to get a guy that they felt could be an absolute difference maker who wanted out of Calgary and wanted a fresh start elsewhere. And so, some luck enters into it, timing. But when all those things present themselves, ultimately you got to be willing to pull the trigger on a massive trade like that. So I think he's done a nice job of reshaping the top of the lineup, but also filling out at the fringes, and even a guy like OEL to provide depth. And remember too, at the start of the season, guys, both Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour were out of the lineup. Like Oliver Ekman-Larsson started the season in 25 and 26 minutes. We knew that wasn't sustainable, but he has fallen into his spot. They kind of lucked into Gustav Forsling. Why it worked out for him in Florida, where it did. Like a team like Carolina doesn't let those types of players get away, but Carolina did. Obviously, the Canucks traded him away. He was in Chicago, but he has found himself and had found his game and clearly found a home there in Florida. But it's fascinating, and I don't know if you saw the graphic the league put out, that first time in NHL history that the top 4 picks from a draft class are going to meet in a Stanley Cup final. And you're looking at Aaron Ekblad, you're looking at Sam Reinhart, Leon Draisaitl, and Sam Bennett, and what a player Bennett has turned into now. It's taken him a while to become the player that I think everybody thought he was going to be when he was 18-year-old Sam Bennett. Here he is a decade later. But this is to bring it back to the Canucks guys, and I don't want to go deep here, but just a reminder, when you see that those guys from the top of the 2014 draft class are all playing in the Stanley Cup final, a reminder of what an absolute bust Jake Virtanen turned out to be as a 6th overall pick. Like the Vancouver Canucks should have a 28-year-old power forward right winger, a team that needs goals from the wing. This should be a guy that's in his prime in the National Hockey League, and here he is toiling over in some second league in Europe, and obviously had issues that took him out of the National Hockey League. But it just it kind of reminded me of, sometimes, and look, like Bennett wasn't drafted by Florida, Reinhart wasn't drafted by Florida, but Bill Zito's taken some big swings there to bring in guys, and it's worked for them, and here they have another opportunity. The other thing I'll say too, and this drives me batty when I think back to Florida's in consecutive Stanley Cup finals. That 2011 team, like one and done, one of the best teams never to win the Stanley Cup, and then we all know the history, but got punted in the next round, in the next year, in the first round by the Los Angeles Kings. The fact that the Vancouver Canucks didn't get a couple of kicks at the can out of that group, that team, all those years ago, that still sticks with me as much as the frustration of losing a Game 7 on home ice to the Boston Bruins. It was they were President's Trophy winners the next year. Obviously, Daniel Sedin was injured. The Kings were not your sort of run-of-the-mill 8th seed, but the fact that we have seen a bunch of teams get, they build these teams and you get a couple of opportunities, and it just didn't happen for the Vancouver Canucks back in 2011, 2012.
Well, the good news is the good people of Penticton won't let Duncan Keith or his rogue elbow forget about that all these years later. You penned on Nils Hoglander, Jeff, for Canucks Army. Trade bait or too invaluable? Tell us about the piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know the kind of season he had with 24 goals, but come playoff time, he was a healthy scratch for a couple of games, and his ice time dropped by a couple of minutes in the playoffs compared to the regular season. Look, I was disappointed in him in the playoffs. I thought this is a guy that's built for, forget the goals. The goals are great, but I just thought the Energizer Bunny, would be a bit of a pain and a pest, and we didn't see any of that. And so I don't know if the stage was too big for him. It wouldn't be the first guy that falls a little short in his first true look at Stanley Cup playoff action. But, I think we sometimes forget he's 23 years of age. He had 13 goals as a 20-year-old, a raw rookie in that all-Canadian division, coming over from Sweden. He had played the first half of that season in the SHL and made the jump, new country, all these new surroundings, weird environment. And he, made that team out of training camp and was good. And then there were a couple of steps back, and it wasn't about his offense. It was always about play away from the puck. Travis Green had issues. So did Bruce Boudreau. Ultimately gets sent to Abbotsford. And, we've learned since that, like, he embraced that. He wasn't happy about being in the minors, but he embraced it as an opportunity to round out his game. Well, he comes back this year, starts in the bottom 6, scores on 10 of his first 40 shots. He got off to this terrific start and earned a promotion, played higher in the lineup, ends up with 24 goals, all of them at even strength. This is a team that needs help on the wings. We know that. But it's also a player that scored at a 20% clip this year, where his career average is 12.5. So, we went through this last offseason with Andrei Kuzmenko, and is there going to be regression, and can he possibly be expected to repeat as a 24-goal scorer? I didn't think that he had great chemistry with Elias Pettersson. They kind of were out of options, and he was scoring as a bottom six guy, so why not try him in the top six? His two halves of the season were almost identical, 12 goals in each. So there was a consistency. It wasn't that he had this great start and then fell off where some others did. He was able to back it up with a decent second half as well. But I think the question is, why did he struggle? Was it related to Elias Pettersson and Ilya Mikheyev? Was it just that line in the playoffs and none of them were going? Whatever the case, I would be wary of trading a 23-year-old who, was a second-round pick. But, guys, he's 7th from his draft class in goals scored and 11th in points from that 2019 draft class. Like, he has turned into an absolute home run of a second-round draft pick, again, at the age of 23. Now he's got 1 year left on a $1.1 million team-friendly deal. I don't know that he needs to score 24. What if he came back and was a 15 to 20 goal scorer, but rounded out other parts of his game? The underlying numbers this past season were really good. Like, where other coaches had thrown darts at some of his defensive deficiencies, the Canucks controlled play and outscored opponents and did all the things you want them to do at even strength with Hoglander out there. So, I know people say, hey, nice trade piece, and certainly other teams would be interested in a player like Nils Hoglander. I get that, but just keep in mind that if you're trading him out, you got to get something in return that's going to replace some of those 24 goals that he scored.
And they need wingers. Can Podkolzin be the next Hoglander? Do you have confidence in that?
I don't, and I don't want to write Vasily Podkolzin off. I want this guy to turn out to be something more than he is right now, but he had a pretty good run there down the stretch of playing every night and getting some opportunities and just didn't do anything offensively. And it kind of feels like that offensive switch has been turned off. And, I think this idea that he's going to be a big-time point producer and goal scorer at the NHL level, that ship's probably sailed. But then you go back to his draft, and a lot of people kind of warned that, but they liked his all-around game. They liked the fact that he's a guy that, could be out there late in games, protecting leads for you. There was a lot of talk of him becoming a penalty killer. If he's not going to have the offensive side to his game at the NHL level, he's 23 now. Like, he's 5 years removed from that 2019 draft. You got to figure out a way to, become a role player then. And I just think there's still a disconnect between trusting him to be a penalty killer at the National Hockey League, and yet the work rate is there. I think the hockey smarts are there. You don't become a 10th overall pick without the high hockey IQ, but at what point are they going to test him and give him that opportunity to be a penalty killer at the very least? And I do wonder if they're not able to retain some of the guys that did some of the penalty killing for them this year. Is that a role that Vasily Podkolzin could take on? But we just haven't seen him put in that position. So as I sit here right now in the offseason, I'm not convinced that that's something that they're looking at, but boy, this just feels like a make it or break it year to me. I mean, 23 right now, they committed to him on that same sort of Hoglander contract. So, yeah, you hope history repeats itself. You hope that he watched the way that Nils Hoglander responded to being sent to the minors and then returning. But, it was just I was left wanting so much more other than Podkolzin getting out on the ice and, running around and trying to hit guys. Great, but there's got to be a whole lot more to his game than just that at the end of the night.
I think most people would take his rookie year back. 14 goals, 12 assists. You'd sign up for that now.
I mean, Jeff Alvin mentioned it as end of year presser. It's not something we've dug into with you all that much since, but like he said, we want to make opportunity for some of your young players. Like who? Like which young players are ready to step up here? Do you have faith that any of these young players are a bona fide Vancouver Canuck?
They talk about Max Sasson a lot.
NHL regular for next year.
An NHL regular? No. I mean, I think we're still wondering, is Nils Amon an NHL regular? And if so, what does he bring to the mix that others don't? And I guess it would be some penalty killing utility. But no, I know they're high on Max Sasson, and that's great. But do I see him ready to step in? Like if they can't retain Elias Lindholm, I don't think they've got a replacement waiting in the wings. And this is another part of the story, guys, that I go back to Jake Virtanen references in the same episode. I apologize. But, you look at the last 10 years, right? I mean, absolutely crushed it with Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson as a first rounder, and Brock Besser. But we're talking about 10 years of the draft now. we just talked about Podkolzin. He's not a sure thing National Hockey Leaguer. We know about Virtanen and Ole Levy. But the other thing, too, is like I think now we're starting to see that trading away 4 first-rounders here in the last 5 years, like that is starting to catch up with them. We'll see what happens with Lekkerimäki, obviously, and Willander will give him every opportunity. But, the trading away a first for JT Miller, that worked out for the Vancouver Canucks. But beyond that, I mean, they gave away the first that became Dylan Guenther to Arizona, and Guenther looks like he's going to be a heck of a player and already is a goal scorer at the National Hockey League level. They took the first they got from the Islanders and flipped that to Detroit in the Hronek deal. And then another one goes out the door here to Calgary this year in the Lindholm and Kuzmenko trade. So, I mean, when I look at what they've got in the system right now, Podkolzin, Archie Bains is a nice story, and I'm not giving up on him, but he didn't really move the meter in the 2 opportunities that he got. Like, he looks like he might be a tweener there. And then beyond that, like Aatu Räty, he was playing wing at the end in Abbotsford this year. So I'm not even sure where they see him and kind of where they've got him slotted within their own organization. But the bottom line in all of this is Lekkerimäki a winger and Willander a defenseman. You've peddled 4 first-rounders, as I just documented there, and they really don't have much down the middle out in Abbotsford.
Last question from me, Jeff. Saravelli joined on Friday, and he didn't think there was much of an appetite from the Canucks in terms of moving on from Filip Hronek. What's your sense there? Do you think, as much as we're talking about it, that management is just forging forward with their top pair right side guy, or could you see some movement with Hronek this summer?
I think ultimately they will find a way to retain Filip Hronek. This is an organization that for the better part of 50 years has been looking for a legitimate stud right side guy, even without the pairing of Quinn Hughes, just a guy on the right side that can do the things that Filip Hronek has done. I go back to the question that I posed to him, and I don't want to relive that, but he has to figure it out. They've got to figure it out. And maybe it is as simple as an arm injury that he didn't want to discuss. But he was a different player in the second half. Like, what happened? Where did that go? Is he a close to 50-point guy? Is even a 40-point on the regular if they lock him up long-term here? Or, is he a 20 to 25-point guy that was just overcooking in that first half of the season? And, he wasn't alone. A lot of guys benefited from the fact that a bunch of pucks were going in, and a 10-goal win in San Jose and an 8-1 win on opening night. We know that they rode the PDO machine there in the first half, and I think a guy like Hronek was a huge part of that. Now, he's a defenseman, right? So first and foremost, it's, how does he defend? What can he do on a pairing with Quinn Hughes? And I think we saw glimpses of that and long stretches of that, in fact. And I'm sure Quinn Hughes wants him to be back. Quinn Hughes didn't get to 92 points on his own. A lot of that was that when that pairing was out there in the regular season, they absolutely tilted the ice in the Canucks' favor. So you gave up a lot to get him. You always knew that he was going to be a restricted free agent with arb rights, and that this day would come where it's going to cost them. But at the same time, a 26-year-old right shot guy who could be a 40 to 50-point defenseman for a bunch of years, like, that's a commodity that you do want to keep. I hope for the organization, and I hope they've got the information they need to figure out what happened there in the second half and into the playoffs, because let's be honest, he wasn't very good. There were a handful of guys that weren't good enough come playoff time. But I think, when you look at the body of work here, he is the kind of player ultimately that you want to keep, that you want to continue to build around, but it's going to come at a significant cost. I don't think he's going to be able to get to the 8s for all the talk that's out there. I mean, that's negotiation. That's all part of the dance. But, he's not going to come cheap, and they're not going to get much of a discount. And he's got an agent in Alan Walsh that, plays hardball, and that's the way this whole thing works as well. So, if they commit to Filip Hronek, and I think that they're going to, that is going to force them then probably to walk away from some of the other guys that play, the fans perhaps would prefer that they keep, but you can't get everybody under the salary cap, especially when you got the OEL money on the books and going up here for the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. No, Jeff, we got plenty of off-season grist for the mill here, and we will talk about it as we go forward. Have a great week. Catch up next week.
All right, guys. Thanks.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Matt Sekeres, Blake Price, back at the Nation Network studios. As mentioned, we got a different show today because we're putting the entirety of the podcast on YouTube, which means making its YouTube debut here. It's hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter, or X.com. It's a presentation of Northland's golf course. And Blake, I will lead us off today because, I had a variety of sporting interests yesterday. The RBC Canadian Open, the U.S. Women's Open, of course, before the hockey game at night. Well, hockey games, plural. And so I had time to sit down and watch the Blue Jays. At Caitlin McGrath, Vlad is starting at third base. For the first time in 5 years, since his rookie season, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. started at third base. Of course, he came up as a third baseman. They took one look at him in the majors and went, move on over to first. So he turned into a Gold Glove first baseman. And in fairness, has gotten in much better shape. So it takes him 7+ innings to see a defensive play at third base. He makes the first one, which is routine. Then he makes an extraordinary play, damn near behind second base, with a turn and fire to get the runner at first. So, hey, well done, Vladdy. But it got me thinking of just how poorly constructed this Blue Jays team is and how I'm so far done with Shatkins, Mark Shapiro, Ross Atkins, the management team. Because the reason why Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's playing third base, and as Dan Schulman told the story on the broadcast, it sounded like he went to them and said, let me try third base. I can play third base and help us out. Because here was the thing. With Vladdy and Justin Turner, their big offseason addition, you couldn't play anybody else at DH. Because Turner's done playing third base. He can't play there anymore.
There is one more option.
So you're trying to get Danny Jansen's bat in the lineup when he's not catching because he's your one good hitter this year, your one exceptional hitter, and you did not have a positional chance to do that unless one of these guys flips over and plays third base. What's the other option?
Joey Votto.
Well, Enish, when he gets healthy.
Yes.
Of course, yesterday they went through these machinations to get Daniel Vogelback's bat into the lineup, and I'm just not seeing that one. He's a washed-up, good-for-nothing hitter. But as Schulman and Martinez, and by the way, I saw a tweet yesterday, I forget who, Buck Martinez is so done with this team. You can tell as Buck is doing the color, just what he thinks of everything about this team right now, including the construction of it.
Back in his day,
he asked the question of Atkins a few weeks ago, are you just not good enough?
The batting averages that we're seing here, though, back in his day were the ninth.
Oh yeah,
guy.
You hit 240. You were lucky to. Dan and Buck mused that it could be because of Spencer Horwitz as well, a first baseman down at AAA in Buffalo who got a cup of coffee last year. He's really knocked the cover off the ball at AAA. Now he may just be a quad A player. He's an older guy, but at some point you would like to think that he's going to get called up and that they're going to give him a shot instead of Vogelback. And of course, Vladdy playing third base would go a long way there.
First one for me at Jose Morgado. And after a fabulous first week at the French Open at Roland Garros, Jose tweets, world number 3 Carlos Alcaraz easily beats Felix Auger-Aliassime 6-3, 6-3, 6-1 to reach the quarterfinals at Roland Garros for a third consecutive year. 8th career Grand Slam quarterfinal. He turned 21 less than a month ago, getting better and better. This was his best performance in months. Felix was the last Canadian standing, made it to the 4th round after, all 4 big guns got to the 3rd round and then 3 fell. That was a tough go, though, for Felix to draw Alcaraz in the 4th, and it went about as poorly as Felix. I mean, with all that, you'd at least want Felix to steal a set, but he couldn't even manage to get to 4 game wins.
I would say he was the second best player on court, but he might have been the third.
Yes,
best player.
yeah. Find somebody
He
else.
was not in that match.
No.
I watched that for a minute
Yeah.
before it
And
became,
saw that coming.
before it became apparent
Yes.
who was going to win and who was going to win in relatively short order. At Offside DH, McDavid's brother was watching crucial Oilers playoff game while at a wedding. Now, if you talk to NHLers, the one thing, and particularly if you talk to NHLers, girlfriends or wives, the one frustration that they will articulate with regards to the life is there are only a set number of weekends in the summer to get married.
Right.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
Because no NHLer is going to book a wedding before the end of the Cup final, right?
Right.
All of them very optimistic.
Yes.
So you have those few weeks in July and August before you're going to have to get back to your NHL city and start skating informally with the group. There's
Mhm.
like 6 or 7 weekends that maybe work.
That's right.
Well, Cameron McDavid, the brother of Connor McDavid, and his better half, Sarah, they had a wedding this past weekend. Sarah was in the bridal party. And so there are Instagram stories of Sarah showing guests watching the game on their phones at wedding tables.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's, I mean, I hopefully they're all fans of the game and, you know, all
Mhm.
had shared interest in watching it. Otherwise, boy, you feel bad for the lucky couple.
Mhm. Sorry to steal your thunder.
Yes.
But Cameron's brother is going to the Cup final.
A couple, both moments are historic in their own right.
In their own way.
At Cam Football Talk, it's officially Tanny time for the Canadian men's national team as the Nigerian-Canadian dual national has officially been called into camp for the upcoming friendlies against Netherlands and France. Tanny Oluwaseyi has 7 goals and 4 assists in 15 matches this season. Well-deserved. More impressive than just those 7 goals and 4 assists, which, by the way, match Ryan Gauld's appearances, is that Oluwaseyi's done it in way fewer minutes. He's only got 6 starts to his name. And he's got 7 goals and 4 assists as opposed to Ryan Gauld, who's played in every single match for the Vancouver Whitecaps this season. So it gives you a little bit of he's just been a meteoric rise here. He's a little bit older, 23 or 24, I want to say. But could he get capped and get sealed into the Canadian team here with an appearance perhaps against Netherlands and France? Throw him in late game maybe to get that cap snugly fitted on Oluwaseyi.
Do you have any more?
No.
Okay.
Fire away.
Because we like to end on a funny one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to at Taj 1944 Canucks aggregator.
Oh. Making it you're closing out the first ever YouTube edition of hashtags with Taj. Okay.
Well, he's hey, Canucks Twitter, baby.
Yeah.
Undefeated.
It's true.
Hearing the Edmonton Oilers are already making plans for the Stanley Cup parade, they've reached out to the city of Kelowna to ask if it could be held there. Huh? What do you think? Right down Harvey Avenue, or are we going to make a turn
Oh my goodness.
up the lakeside?
Hey, by late June, most of Edmonton might be there. So
I know.
It's good strategy. Good strategy.
That's hashtags for today. It's a presentation of Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app, book tee times with a touch of your thumb. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in that date for a $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability there. And then singles. Save yourself from the dreaded wait list. Book yourself a tee time online. If you see an existing twosome, threesome on the sheet, slot yourself right in. Guaranteed spot and peace of mind. We're going to be out there this week.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
And of course, remember that Sekeres Price is always a presentation of Applewood.
Mm-hmm.
Applewood Kia in Surrey. Fabulous deals right now. Go get yourself into an electric vehicle like the 2024 Kia EV6. You can finance it from 4.9% right now. Applewood Kia in Surrey. It's all good at Applewood.
CFL Commissioner Randy Ambroise is next. We've all heard of the overdose crisis, also known as the toxic drug crisis.
But did you know that it affects men disproportionately?
Last year, 78% of people dying here in BC were men, and the majority were 30 to 59 years old.
It's not easy to struggle with addiction, and the stigma around it can make it harder for people to reach out for help.
There is help and support. Every journey is different, and the thing that helps one person, it might not be the same for everyone.
So when someone does reach out, be compassionate and have open, non-judgmental conversations.
We here at Sekeres and Price want to be part of the solution.
If you or someone you care about is struggling, you can find supports and services near you at helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca, and you can also watch powerful real-life stories of recovery on Help Starts Here website. In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
The 111th Grey Cup will be hosted at BC Place in November. It's our city's first chance to host this fantastic Canadian event for the first time in 10 years. And looky here, we got the commissioner of the Canadian Football League, Randy Ambroise, back in the Nation Network studio. Good to see you again. Thanks for stopping by.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, press tour for the Grey Cup here, huh?
Yeah, I started off with a bang this morning. Announced our halftime show, which will be the Jonas Brothers. Very excited about that. I know it's got to be a really big deal because all three of my daughters quickly texted me and asked me about tickets and flights because they'll want to be here for that. I think it's a great choice. It's an exciting choice, and we'll just add even more to what's already going to be a phenomenal event.
I just hope you got some breakfast, Randy. It's a long day here, I know, promoting, so we'll make sure to get you some breakfast after the interview. You haven't typically announced the halftime act this far in advance. What came together this year that allowed you to do it?
Well, the music industry's changed so much in the last several years. The old music industry, a lot of the acts that we secured were to promote their music and album sales, and that, of course, album sales isn't where they drive revenue now. They've been driving revenue through live performances. So securing talent has been more difficult. Over the last couple of years, in wake of that, getting a secured act early has been harder. So we talked with our good friends and partners at Universal Music, and we basically said, no, we want to get it done early. We want to make sure we are secure with our act. And then a big driving force was Amar Doman. So we had a small committee: Dwayne Vanneau, Amar, myself, and my colleague Greg Dick, the four of us. And we talked about, first of all, Amar's got a way better playlist than I do. And we talked about the kind of show we wanted to have. Amar wanted to, have an act that would really bring people together, family friendly, and one that would really attract the younger demographic of fans. And we certainly got that in the Jonas Brothers. 20 million albums sold worldwide. And we set a deadline. We said we wanted to get it done early. We wanted it to be done in April. So it has been done for quite some time. And now a pleasure to roll it out. And of course, now it gives us a long window to talk about it and get CFL fans and Canadians excited about the upcoming Grey Cup.
Do you have tangible stats on what you think halftime acts add to ticket sales and hype? Like, is there something that you can hold on to, or is it just sort of that mystique that you can feel?
I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
We'd like to say we know specifically, but we don't. It's impossible really to tell. I think this is going to help us. Look, they've announced their season opener act with 50 Cent, and they've now sold more than 50,000 tickets for that game. And I have no doubt that this is going to have a big boost on Grey Cup ticket sales. We've already been, in terms of season tickets holders, but both here, Lions ticket holders and across the league, the pre-sale has gone phenomenally well. And now, of course, they go on public sale tomorrow at 2:00 Pacific, 5:00 Eastern. And with the Jonas Brothers, I think it's gonna bring a lot of energy, and we expect Grey Cup will get sold out pretty fast.
I honestly wonder if Green Day did you some favors last year too, because they were great, and they actually went viral south of the border, and people were talking about how great and I think it just makes it an attractive gig for artists too.
Oh, it is, and this is this is a great city to if you're a performer, a global performer. You certainly know where Vancouver is, and you'll know that it's a beautiful venue. BC Place will be a great place And of course, it has the added advantage. It has no weather considerations to contend with. There's just a lot of great. It's one of the reasons coming back after 10 years is so special. And it's especially nice to come back with Amar Doman as the owner, because as you both know, he has brought a lot of energy to this market, and he's passionate about the BC Lions. He's passionate about making it the provincial team, not a city team. And he's been a great supporter of all things CFL. So I'm excited to be coming here.
Loved how Green Day last year sort of played in the end zone on a stage. It looked like there was a lot of people around it. Do you know whether Jonas Brothers going to play at center field of BC Place, or because 50 Cent and One Republic have played in end zones? Do you have it all blocked out yet, Commish? Is that part of your responsibilities?
You might be surprised to know that this really isn't an area of my
Gotcha. All right.
I'm thrilled to be with the two of you talking about the halftime show, but that's probably about where my participation is.
Do you choreograph the dancing? No?
Well,
sound check with Randy.
Every morning I choreograph my own dance routine.
Right.
But again, that's about the extent.
So roof closed for sure, right? Like if we had a bellwether day here in November, we would still be closing the roof for Grey Cup?
Again, not on my radar.
Okay. All right.
Stage, no.
We had Dwayne Vanneau in that seat last week. He said ticket sales for the Grey Cup were going very well amongst the Lions season ticket subscribers who obviously had a chance to buy early here. What's been the response that you've seen in Vancouver and across the country?
Well, again, I'm told that this morning, everything just lit up with the news that the Jonas Brothers were coming. Ticket sales go, we go on sale tomorrow. There's been a real buzz everywhere I've been traveling a lot. Everywhere I've gone, people are excited to be coming back to Vancouver for Grey Cup. And there's an energy around the league. As you know, last year, TV ratings were up 9% overall, but in the 25 to 54 category, they were up 34%. Huge growth in our three major markets, Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. There's a real energy there. Ticket sales were up in those markets. And it's just a great feeling heading into this season. So, pretty much everywhere we go, there's a great feeling. Strongest ownership group we've ever had in the league's history, from Pierre-Carl Palladot in Montreal, you got John Ruddy and Roger Greenberg in Ottawa, MLSE, and the Argos had a great year last year. A lot of energy in that organization. Bob Young, Scott Mitchell, Stelco in Hamilton. Winnipeg's probably the toast of the town right now in terms of CFL franchises. Saskatchewan, Edmonton will have. We are confident they'll have new owners before too long. You got Murray Edwards in Calgary, and now, of course, Amar Doman.
Yeah.
That's a lineup. If you want to talk about hanging out with a cool group of people, you hang out with this group.
Very fair. Amar and best practice. I want to get back to that in a second. But first, you already mentioned it. 50 for Fitty already. And this is a third straight year where we've gotten a pregame concert in advance of the home opener from Amar Doman and the BC Lions. The response has been outstanding to the point where now it's kind of a Vancouver tradition to get this concert. Is that something that can be done across the rest of the league? Are other teams looking at this, or are they doing it? Because needless to say, it's a hell of a one-day ticket bump, but it's also an incredible way to kick off.
Particularly for the big markets. You can see this working in Toronto to get some buzz going there for Toronto.
Yeah, look, I think everyone is noticing what everyone's doing. And this has been one of the things that is really, so Management Council, which is our 9 presidents and myself and my management team, we meet every month. And one of the comments that I heard from at our most recent governors meeting is how high functioning that group is. There's a lot of best practices sharing. And even amongst the board of governors, the lead governors in particular, the owners, there's been a lot of talk about, what everyone else is doing and how do we learn those lessons. I just think right now the level of collaboration in the league has never been higher. And everyone is looking at what's happening and what's driving success. So, I can't say for sure whether or not this happens in other CFL markets. What I can tell you is that it's happening in a big way here. And it's driving a lot of success. There is an energy around the BC Lions that we haven't seen in a long time. There's a feeling that this is a franchise on the move in all the right directions. And, again, it's just a pleasure to be around Amar. He has a vision for this to be a provincial team, not a city team. Right now, as you know, 50 communities, they've got a Grey Cup tour going on. That's cool. And then Touchdown Pacific in Victoria on the Labor Day weekend.
I was just going to...
let's talk about Touchdown Pacific. What an amazing job you guys have done collaboration with the Lions and making all this happen. And a little bit bound by the footprint of the stadium that they're on, but it sounds like they could have put 30 if it was physically feasible. Touchdown Atlantic was kind of a tester for that 10th team possibility. This is just an endeavor to spread the BC Lion brand. Is that
this is Amar Doman's vision for this team to belong to every British Columbian, that he wants this to have the feel of a team that belongs to the entire province. It doesn't speak to long-term aspirations to be in Victoria. It speaks clearly to Amar's passion for his hometown.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks clearly to our passion to share the game with as many Canadians as we possibly can, taking the game into new communities, the level of energy that will happen in Victoria. If you want to be a great place on the Labor Day weekend this year, you'll be in Victoria, because it's going to be epic. And the games have so much energy, and bringing Ottawa to Victoria for that game, I think it'll be a special game for the Red Blacks, a special game for the Lions, and a great day for the CFL.
Well, we're so very pleased about it, Randy, because in the 13 years Blake and I have been doing this show, boy, have we heard from Lions fans on Vancouver Island. So great to get them a game. As you say, Amar would know that better than most as a Victoria guy. But we also love the fact, and this is not just the Island football fans, but the interior football fans as well. The 4 p.m. kickoffs on the weekend makes it easy for them to get back to the game and back home in the same day, not to take a hotel overnight. Has your schedule makers have to go through some gymnastics to make that happen? Because I know Amar, that was one of the things that he looked at, and the response from all across the province for that has been fantastic.
Yeah, lots of gymnastics, but that's why we only hire people who've got experience on the balance beam. Like,
Right.
we just don't hire anybody else. But, again, real credit to the team presidents. It's a special group, including a very special guy in Dwayne Bonneau here, and their level of collaboration and understanding how they help each other, how the scheduling helps each other. And you're right, like that game time, that was a point that Dwayne made to his colleagues, because it does take a give and take in order for, somebody to get a game time or a game day that works for them. Somebody's got to choose a different game time. And again, that group has been remarkably collaborative. Frankly, it's a special group to work with. They've been helping each other focus on how do we grow the league, and it's really working. So yeah, some gymnastics, but really it begins and ends with great collaboration.
Do you care? Do you care? Like, TSN and the Lions have opinions on those start times. Do you care as a league concept? Do you care what start times are, as long as those two other factions are happy?
What I really cared about was the strategy. I really cared, first of all, this summer, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I cared a lot about that.
Yeah. Okay.
I wanted to see that happen. But once you go to that format, now you're not having to stack games on top of each other. So that was one of the big positive changes, is now we get to focus on, now you can focus on what's the best time that day, because you're not having to account for a second game that'll have to be played later on. That was probably the single biggest positive change. It was the willingness of the teams to say, let's try this. Let's try to have a 4-day-a-week football schedule, and really make sure people just know from Thursday to Sunday, I'm watching CFL in the summer. That was a big change. And then it allowed for a lot of flexibility.
And that was the debate, right? 4 days a week doing exactly your concept, or the other concept for a lot of sports. And I think you guys have tried it, is have a destination day. I know if I want to watch CFL, it's on this day. What won the debate there between that concept versus the spread it out?
Well, I think it was the ability to customize those start times. So this is not only good for the BC Lions 4:00, which, as you said, fans can get in, enjoy the day. Last year, I leaving a game, I was overwhelmed by how many people stayed in the area, went to a restaurant, had a post-game meal. But allows those fans that are traveling to get home, in time to, go to bed at night. But it's also a 7:00 Eastern kickoff time, prime time. So TSN is another, and TSN and RDS, they get a shout out because they were also at the table saying, how do we do this in a way that's good for everybody? One of the qualities that our governors have brought to the table, I think it's been very prominent, is a win-win culture. How do we do things that are not only good for me, whoever me happens to be, but that's good for we. And that takes leadership. It takes governors to say, I'm going to put down my self-interest in favor of what's best for all of us. I think we're seeing a lot of that. This league is heading in the right direction almost entirely because the governors are leading us and they're showing a willingness to collaborate. That's what's made it so special.
Touchdown Atlantic went through many different years. Is Touchdown Pacific going to be an annual thing? I know the Lions have to give up a home game, which is a thing, but can Touchdown Pacific be an annual thing?
Well, look, we are passionate about the Touchdown product. We think it's a great tool to share our game. I'm going to make an argument to Dwayne. So Dwayne, if you're listening, I'm going to make an argument that one of the things we should do is probably do these things a couple years in a row, because you get a little momentum. You do a lot of learning. I don't know if that'll work or not. And I haven't had that formal conversation with Dwayne, but I like that feel. But then I also like the feel of other markets that, we could share our game with, build the fan base across the country. There is something special about attending a live CFL game, a regular season game, with all the energy that goes with it. And we have our sights on other markets. Other markets have contacted us now asking about a game for their community. So, look, the flywheel is turning. There's a lot of very positive momentum around everything, including the touchdown.
Lions versus an Alberta team in Kelowna, I think would do really well. The Atlantic brand, though, the 10th team has always been a holy grail. Is it how deep in mothballs is the project?
No,
right
it's
now?
not in mothballs at all.
Nope.
It's a great question, by the way, but it's not in mothballs. Look, what the governors have asked me to do is to continue to pursue it. It's on my radar all the time, but we're trying to be very strategic about it. Perhaps take a slightly quieter approach to have conversations, to see where those conversations take us. It's not just Atlantic Canada. There's a really good argument for Quebec City. It's it may be the strongest amateur football market in all of Canada right now. Football is really big in the province of Quebec. So we're having those conversations. We're doing it quietly. We're going to do it very systematically. I believe we will have our 10th team before too long. We're just going to take it one step at a time.
What's too long, Randy?
Yeah, I think of it as a kind of a 5-year window as from here where we are today to that 10th team. We have to get it right. In whatever format we choose, we have to get it right.
I know there was a time when Jacques Tanguay, the backer of the Laval Rouge and Or program, didn't necessarily want to share or didn't necessarily think that your league would work in that town. Do you have to have the support of the Laval program, the school, and their backers to make the Canadian Football League in Quebec City
well,
viable?
First of all, I'll tell you, Monsieur Tanguay is a remarkable man, and what he's done with the Rouge et Or is nothing short of spectacular. Again, what we'll do is we are going to talk to all the stakeholders in the markets that we've identified as having high potential, and we'll work through those issues. It might yield a good outcome. It might not yield a short-term positive outcome, but we're going to have the conversations. One of the things I like about where we're at is we're not feeling desperate. We don't have this isn't oh my gosh, we have to do this or else. We're going to do it when it's right. We're going to do it when we've got the support from the people we need support from. And that creates a different atmosphere to have a discussion with somebody.
Do you think getting the league together with Laval could create a stadium construction project there in Quebec City?
Well, first of all, that Laval itself is quite a remarkable facility as it currently is. And, its capacity is pretty reasonable as it currently stands today. So, it's hard to know until we dig in a little bit deeper exactly what might need to be done. But
is football in Quebec growing still, or has it hit a plateau?
Oh, no, it's growing. Yeah. And Quebec is a great sports province. It's a passionate sports community. Arguably, if you look at the old, Canadians Nordique rivalry, it was as good as Edmonton Calgary. It was as good as we know a Toronto Hamilton. There was a very special tension between Quebec City and Montreal. One day I'd like to see us have that tension.
Oh,
I mean, just look at rosters and go down to the national players. My goodness, Quebec produces so many of them these days. You took some heat in the offseason on Chad Kelly. Should you have moved quicker? Should the league have done something sooner and moved quicker on the Chad Kelly file?
There's always an opportunity when you encounter these situations to learn from them. We certainly have. But in terms of could we have moved more quickly? I don't think so. Look, from the Thursday evening when we were informed that this lawsuit had been filed, we had discussions on Friday morning about hiring an independent investigator. That independent investigator was hired Friday afternoon, but they have to notify the parties. They have to tell the parties that they have been hired. So they have to have that conversation with the affected groups. That happened through the weekend and into Monday. And to Monday, we now had a live investigation underway. We made an announcement, I believe, on Tuesday morning that the investigation had started. We couldn't have done that, frankly, any quicker. The investigation itself is not a interview people once and then it's over and write a report. Oftentimes when you are doing the interviews, there's conflicting ideas. So you have to speak to a party, you speak to another party, and then you have to go back to parties, not just once or twice, but sometimes you have to go back multiple times as the investigators try to really understand exactly what happened. So that process takes time because it's also a matter of availability. Look, I think we landed in a good place. We've taken great advice from our independent advisors. In fact, last week I met with a group of experts in this space to really review our policy, understand, are we on the right track? Are we aspiring to the right things? I got a great affirmation that the path we're on, but I also got some advice on things that we can improve on, and that's good. That's the way it should be. So, could we have done it better? I think there's things we would tweak. But I feel like we landed in a pretty good place.
What was your reaction when you heard he was on the field at rookie camp with the Argos?
Well, of course, my reaction was the same as everybody else's. There was a lot of negative backlash, and I don't want that for any of our teams. I don't want that for any of our athletes. And but to the Argos' credit, they resolved that issue pretty quickly. And I think, again, what I'm impressed by is there's been a lot of learning across the, all the various stakeholders in this particular matter. There's been a lot of learning going on. We'll get better as a result of this. The key is there is a deep desire to do the right thing. There's a deep desire to be a league where everyone is respected, where everyone is treated with respect, where it's a safe environment for all the people that are in it. So now, we've learned some lessons and we'll apply those lessons to making the league better going forward.
Help us out on the Sean Lemon matter. Spent some time here in BC. We've had Sean on the show before. So he's suspended, but there's an appeals process that allows him to be in Montreal Alouettes camp. Going forward, are you comfortable with that, or do you want to wield a heavier hand when it comes to players who gamble on games?
Well, under the terms of our collective bargaining agreement with the CFLPA, it says that if a suspension is if somebody appeals their suspension, they are allowed to continue to play until that suspension hearing is held. And look, if you
should that apply on gambling players gambling on games?
So again, when those rules are written, when those agreements are made, you can't think of every possible scenario. You say generically. They apply to everything. So if there's an appeal, you can perform. If you ask me, I would like for him not to be playing. I would like to get the hearing held quickly, which is what he is owed. I'd like to have that hearing in a thoughtful, constructive way, which is the way they are done. And I'd like for the arbitrator to advise us on what the right go forward. If you ask me, I would prefer that it happen without the player being involved in the game. But the rules are rules and you live by them, and then hopefully you learn from them and make improvements down the road.
Do you know the details of that case? Are you pretty certain that he will remain a suspended player?
I know the details of that case incredibly well.
Yeah.
And I can tell you it is and this is a matter of fact. He gambled on a game that he was playing in. That is the unforgivable sin in the world of sports, and like the world of sports going all the way to a team in Chicago, that where the players all got suspended for gambling on the game. Pete Rose. I mean, we could go on and on. There's been situations recently in other sports. It is the unforgivable sin.
Yeah.
You can't have it happen. The integrity of the game can't be compromised that way.
Is his argument just the severity of the suspension rather than any suspension?
I have not spoken to him directly, so
Mhm.
I'm not going to speak to what
Yeah,
his
okay.
argument is going to be. What I'm going to say is I think we have a clear understanding of what actually happened. And my job is to protect the integrity of the league. And in that case, in that way, I felt like we made the right decision. But now process will follow. We'll go in front of an arbitrator. We'll make our case, and then we'll come out the other end, and we'll know what happens next.
Yeah, and we applauded the decision the day it came down, Randy. We also understand that's the unforgivable sin, much as we like Sean.
But
you just can't do that.
One of the things that's really been highlighted, it is why there are some that don't think gambling should be legal. But frankly, all of this, if it wasn't, would be done underground and would be done in the dark.
Right.
That is bad for sports. It's bad for the community. It's bad for all of us if you have those things driven, underground, and they exist underground. Illegal gambling sites have been up and running around the world for a very long time. I actually think the reason this happened is because of surveillance. Like the message here, frankly, is you do this, you're going to get caught.
That's true.
All right. Let's bring this full circle, Randy. One of the things I love about the Grey Cup, beyond the game itself, and I'm a huge football fan and Canadian football fan, is the coming together of our country. We don't have a lot of events that are like national unity based, and I love the coming together of peoples from all across Canada to the Grey Cup City. And the parties, we got the Grey Cup, and Jeff McWinney, the keeper of the cup here in studio, is going to stop by our stage here in a second. But give me your best push about what's going to happen here in Vancouver outside of the game and the Jonas Brothers.
Well, I think it's going to be one of the greatest Grey Cups of all time. I believe that. I think it's going to be one of the biggest Grey Cup festivals at all time. I've seen the plans for what they're going to do down by the waterfront with the convention centers, and they're going to have something for everyone. It is going to be a remarkably inclusive event. And to your point about it bringing Canadians together, my son-in-law is British, and he said to me, Randy, we couldn't do this in England. He said the fans hate each other, and they literally couldn't be in the same room with each other. But you get a Lions fan standing next to a Stampeders fan or an Elks fan or a Riders fan, and they really shouldn't like each other. But you know what? In that moment, they're just Canadians, and they're having a good time. So it's a special part of
Jeff, come
Canadian.
on up. Bring the
We
cup
got
in
Jeff
here.
McWinney, keeper of the cup, bringing the Grey Cup
Look at that.
up on set, and it's absolutely glistening. I think it's been 15 or so for me,
That's
Blake,
pretty
and I'm
cool.
looking forward to a 16th this November.
And by the way, the particularly bright light that shines in your eyes is from the 1993 Grey Cup.
Oh, is it?
Championship
Is that
team.
the
oh,
one?
really? Yeah.
Jeff does an exceptional job of making sure that one is specially polished.
Who was playing right offensive tackle in that game, Randy?
You know
I
what?
think he had a hell of a
Anybody
day.
have
In
notes?
fact,
I know the guy, great person, above average dancer, and a whole bunch of other good qualities.
I have yet to see a right tackle play a better game since that day, 31 years ago.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I played right guard, but I know
did you right guard?
Chris Moore's, by the way, was my right tackle. And he did play a hell of a game. So, but this is a special part of Canada. And by the way, to Jeff McWinney, he's one of the greatest Canadians I've ever met, and he's proud of Canada. But he's proud of this because this is really a history lesson.
It certainly is.
It is. Good gig. Good gig.
Greatest history book in the world.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go.
The
Yeah.
92 verbs says presented and dedicated tells you
Yeah.
probably the greatest storybook.
And of course, we'll have two Mounties marching that down the field level. Yeah. For the fourth quarter in November when the big game gets here. Randy, Jeff, thanks for stopping
Thanks
by.
so much.
Appreciate
Always
the
appreciate
time.
it.
Thank you.
Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Price from Wall Center presentation, Applewood Auto Group. You can text us 778-402-9680. It's the Great Clips text message inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
Time now for the golf report, brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club, reminding you that tee times for any time during the 2024 season can be booked online. Now get those tee times reserved well in advance to avoid disappointment. And if you have a group of 12 or more, enter the Arnie's Army Golf Getaway, where you and 11 friends could play for free. To book a tee time, or to enter the contest, visit whistlergolf.com. Well, it wasn't Nick Taylor making a 70-foot putt in a playoff hole to win the RBC Canadian Open, but a damn good tournament at a damn good golf course with a ending that many can get behind. Mac Hughes, Corey Connors, they gave it their best shot. Of course, Mackenzie Hughes grew up not 10 minutes away from Hamilton Golf and Country Club.
And if he has Corey Connors round boys in a day.
I know.
Yeah.
But Scotsman Robert McIntyre wins the RBC Canadian Open with his father, Dougie, on the bag. And we're 2 weeks out from Father's Day here, Blake. McIntyre had said earlier in the year that he found life on the PGA Tour lonely. He talked about how it was less family-oriented than the DP World Tour, where you're flying to, all sorts of places and oftentimes with other mates and their families. Not the case for the young Scotsman over here in the USA, and needed a caddy. Put the call out to Dad. Dad got on a plane Monday morning. Hadn't caddied for him since 2017, but at least he had some experience. And then, as he recounted, Dad had, quote, a wee go at me on the 10th hole on Saturday, that he was starting to lose his focus, that some of the things that he had been working on that had hurt him in the past, he did not have a great start to the PGA Tour season, were creeping back in. And Dad got after him, as only Dad can do, right? And it had me wondering, Blake, so many of these player-caddy relationships are boss-employee. If it was a little bit more of a family member or equitable for the guy on the bag, would you see that more often? Caddies basically trying to snap their player to attention, getting after them on course.
It certainly does open up for a more honest repartee between the two parties, rather than, am I going to say something that gets me fired?
That's
going
right.
Forward? That's
the first thing that I thought of. Well, you can fire Dad all you want, but he's still Dad, right?
It's a character win, though. McIntyre's, so for the second straight year, you get these great post game interviews. You get a real scene, and he's a worthwhile champion. I mean, there's 6 or 7 guys that finish with all 4 rounds in the 60s. He's one of them. Corey Connors one of them, incidentally. But his rounds are spectacular: 64, 66, 66, and the 4th round is actually his worst round at 68. But it's all that he needed to do to win the tournament.
Yeah, and by the way, he shot 30 on that back 9 after Dad got after him.
Right.
So,
yeah,
job done. Well done, Dougie, and well done, Robert McIntyre, as winners of the RBC Canadian Open, and no live drama either.
No.
And Rory McIlroy did an interview with Amanda Balionis. So we are through Canadian Open weekend without any kind of scandal or bombshell announcement.
And we should finish
Which has not been the case in the last 3 years. We
should finish the golf report with a disappointing update from the U.S. Women's Open, as the Canadian contingent was not a factor there in a very, very historic U.S. Women's Open, in that it was tough.
Oh, my God.
It was tough.
Billy Horschel, the PGA Tour player watching it, tweeted that he did not think there was a tougher golf course in a competitive venue that he had ever seen. That course in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, just ate the ladies up. Man, was that a tough.
Brooke doesn't make the cut.
No, Brooke was 10 over after the first round, Blake, and she was not alone.
No,
there were many karting double-digit. There were a lot of 80s there in Lancaster.
The last place finisher went 86-83. 86-83, wow. A professional golfer.
Yeah. On to the BC Lions, and we just had Randy Ambroise in studio, but a surprise cut with Marcus Sales, the veteran defensive back who had been a 2-time West All-Star and an All-CFL guy. 6 years up here, and yet he is cut by the BC Lions. Rick Campbell explained they've got a bunch of young players they like there, including some Canadian defensive backs who have shown extremely well. We told you both about Beaulieu and Rene, the 2 Canadians who had really shown well in the defensive backfield, and Coach Campbell talking about how they probably are going to start 8 Canadians when it gets down to Sunday in Toronto against the Argonauts. You typically see that earlier in the CFL season. You have to start 7. So, if you can start 8 or 9 at the beginning of the year, you have some room for attrition. We'll see how practice goes this week, but getting very excited for the start of another BC Lions season, and getting back excited for the Whitecaps season, because after a, really poor month of May, the Caps are back at it here. A 2-1 victory over Colorado on Saturday. Krylock, the MLS veteran, comes in and gets the winner in stoppage time. They're up to 5th in the MLS West, 3 points back of LA Galaxy, who were in 4th place with the game in hand on the Galaxy. And they're off to New England on the weekend to face the worst in the loop Revolution. I mean, we talked about this when they were going into Kansas City. That's the last place team. You got to get that one. I would suspect the same holds true in New England, how bad New England has been.
So this is after the international breaks. It's June 15th in New England. We'll have to see who's there and who's ready to go. And Kubas is probably going to miss that one. He's going to be with Paraguay. So, we'll just see what that lineup looks like. But yeah, I mean, I would still take a slightly diminished Whitecaps team over the Revs. And even past that, they've got Portland at home. They're on the road in Portland. That's a winnable game too. Portland is middling this year. Very, very beatable. And they're on a bit of a run right now, but I've seen them. They're a beatable team. We'll see if the Whitecaps can go on a bit of a run.
And once the Caps play this game in New England, they will be exactly halfway through their MLS schedule.
So if they can be 3 games above 500 at the halfway mark, you take that.
And Blake and I looked at it this morning because it has changed in the past year to year. But the MLS playoffs this year, top 7 teams make it. 8 versus 9 play a wild card entry. Then it's a best of 3 conference quarterfinal. So you want that home pitch advantage. You do so by finishing in the top 4 of the conference. So I'm sure that will be something that Vanni Sartini and the Caps point towards.
They absolutely have already.
Second half of the MLS schedule. Vancouver Canadians sadly rained out on Sunday, but was there Saturday. Saw them win the ball game on Saturday wearing the Oat Milkers jerseys, which is a big minor league sponsorship this year. Was also there on Friday for the first of the doubleheaders, the nooner.
I saw the press release that come out with Oat Milkers, and I'm like, what is going on here?
Yes.
The Oat Milkers, dropping
the Malmo Oat Milkers.
Yes.
Yes, it's a big sponsorship across minor league baseball that everybody's wearing the uniforms at one point. Infielder Ryan McCarthy has done so well. He's been promoted to Double-A New Hampshire. The Seas are on the road this week, but get back after it at the Nat thereafter, including Tuesday, June 11th, the dog days of summer. Bring your pup to the park. Let them soak in the atmosphere at Nat Bailey. And, of course, nooner at the Nat on Friday the 14th, which is a doubleheader because it also includes a makeup rainout game from earlier in the season. Don't miss Family Fun Sunday, Father's Day, June 16th. Get your tickets, CanadiansBaseball.com. Let's get to poll question results from Friday. We asked you, just get it here. Asked you, are you cheering against the Oilers? Yes, no, don't care. What won the poll?
They said yes.
They did. Percentage?
60.
64. It's almost 2 and 3. 20% said no. And I think there were a lot of Oilers fans in the no. And 16% of you say don't care. Yerky, it's the only remaining aspect of the playoffs where I'm emotionally invested. Allie Canuck, not an Oilers fan, but would love to see a team without an extensive state tax advantage and not based in North America's largest market actually win. Hronek says, I want to see McDavid win a cup. Just because I'm a Canucks fan doesn't mean I have to hate every other Canadian team. That's kind of a weird mindset, actually. And Righteous Rider says 100%, but only because of their obnoxious fan base.
Interesting.
They seem to want to fight each other, all these Oilers fans.
Lots
you
of
see the
fights.
number of fights that are going on?
Yeah.
In and around the rink, in the stands, the train station. Errors and omissions brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery. And Blake, I don't know. I'm always skeptical when I see this.
We're good on Fridays, I think. I think that's why.
But I do not have an error or an omission noted from Friday's program. I'm sure Grady has something in his file.
I do not.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
Are you telling me
0.
13 years on and we have the perfect show?
That means we're owed a Yellow Dog Squirrel Chaser Hazy Pale Ale for our good work. The 4-packs, tall cans, on special for the month of June. Look for it on sale at private and government liquor stores.
Thanks for joining us, spending some time, everybody. A reminder, subscribe to all our programs and platforms, including this show, Rink-Wide Vancouver and Canucks Conversation. Follow on social. That's Twitter, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Live on many of those platforms, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on weekdays. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local. Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as